Hey curl friends! So I wanted to come by really quick and give some of my tips on how I get and maintain some of my best Bantu knot out results. I feel like with Bantu knot outs, it's really tricky. It's sort of a hit or a miss. Sometimes they come out really good and sometimes they come out not so good. So I wanted to come and give a couple of ways on how I, one, get the results that I like and how I keep those results throughout the week. So for me, the first thing I like to do is when I set my Bantu knots, I like to set them on 80% dry hair. I don't like to do it completely dry because then the first day is too stretched and then the rest of the week it gets a little sort of lazy looking. So if I start it on damp hair, not soaking wet hair because that takes way too long to dry, but if I start it on damp hair, then it will give me sort of those tighter results, and then as I retwist it and re-knot it throughout the week, those results will get bigger because then I will be doing it on dry hair. So that's the first thing. I like to start all of my Bantu knot outs on freshly washed 80% dry hair. Whenever I am redoing my Bantu knot outs, especially after I started them on wet hair, I don't like to re-wet throughout the week. I mean, you have to do what your hair likes. So if your hair is really, really dry from whatever the weather is doing, or if you're just prone to having really dry hair, of course you can dampen the section again with a spray bottle, but I like to just add a little bit more product. So for me, I'll do a leave-in conditioner when I retwist lightly over it. It's not enough to revert the hair or to shrink it, but it does add more product and it does give me a little bit, a tiny bit of shrinkage that keeps it sort of bouncy, but I never re-wet it throughout the week when I never re-wet it throughout the week when I'm redoing it for the night. Also, when I retwist my hair at night, I don't detangle it ever again. So I'll detangle it the first time, but then after that, I like to let the natural texture of whatever it's been created from the day before add on to the next day's look. So I don't take a comb and like detangle it. I just part it, take two sections and just twist them, and however it comes out is how it comes out the next day. And I found out that that really helps me get sort of the texture and the body that I like throughout the week, is when I don't take the time to detangle. Also, it helps on breakage. So the fact that I'm not detangling my hair all week, it's less prone to be breaking throughout the week when I'm resetting it every single night. When I reset, I like to do it in larger sections so that way the curls become bigger. So the first day I'll do it the twists and the knots are pretty small. They're not extremely small, but they're pretty small. And as I go out throughout the week, I'll make those sections bigger and bigger because it just adds more volume and it kind of gives you the bigger look. So this is second day hair. The first day that I did it, I didn't let it dry 100%. I didn't have time, but it also rained and everything else. So in the clip that you'll see, I was working on it was still stretched, but it had lost all of its curl definition from the Bantu knots before. So I was kind of starting out fresh on fresh Bantu knots, which is okay because my hair was already stretched. Whenever I'm taking out my Bantu knots, I try not to separate too much. It's important to separate because it helps you get the body that you want. But if you separate too much, when you leave out for the day and the wind starts blowing or it gets a little misty or you start sweating, it's just gonna add more frizz. So I like to separate it enough, but not too much, so that way I'm already starting on such big hair, and whatever happens with the elements throughout the day, I'm kind of at a disadvantage because it's going to sort of morph into something else. So I try to stay with it kind of tamed because I know it will expand as the day goes. Try not to ever do Bantu knots if I don't have enough time. So on the first day, it's really, really important that you do the Bantu knots when you have maybe nothing else to do, or you have a dryer so that you can help the drying process happen a little bit faster. Bantu knots is one of the longest styles in terms of drying time. It takes the longest out of almost any style that I've ever tried of curl styles. Bantu knots take the longest, and it's because it's tight, it's twisted so tight that it has so many layers to get dry. It's not sort of open so that it will dry evenly. It's gonna dry probably on the perimeter first and then it will dry on the inside later. So you really need to give yourself, it sounds a little drastic, but a good 12 hours to let it dry. The first day that I did mine, I let it dry for 8 hours and that was not enough. So this time I let it dry for about 12 hours. Also, it was not damp, it was dry to begin with. It just had the product in it. So this go round, it was completely dry and the results came out so much better. So if you want them to be the best that they can be, you really have to do it when you have the time to let it dry, or you have a dryer or some sort of drying tool that will help the process. Fluffing and clips are super important to get your best Bantu knots. When you take the Bantu knots out, especially if you do a 2-strand twist and then the Bantu knot, when you unravel, it kind of goes everywhere, and so you really have to play with it and get it into the shape that you want. And so fluffing, using Afro picks to kind of lift your roots, using the bobby pins to sort of put it in place. I put a couple of bobby pins on the inside of mine just so that it can lay sort of in the way that I like, and for me this is perfect. Another thing you should really keep in mind is to let your hair do whatever it naturally wants to do whenever you're taking your Bantu knots out. So when I take my Bantu knots out, and it's almost like the same when you do a twist out or a braid out, you want to separate and sort of only pull apart the pieces that naturally want to come apart. Sometimes if you're trying to cover up gaps or spaces, you are required to pull apart pieces that don't really want to move, but you want to minimize that so that way you're not creating additional frizz. For this style, frizz is pretty good, but you're gonna have frizz from the time you leave your house to the time you come back to your house. Your Bantu knot out will look completely different, and in a good way, but you want to make sure that you're giving it as much leeway as you can. So don't separate too much in the areas that don't naturally want to come apart themselves. If you do the Bantu knots the correct way, it should start to, as soon as you start to pull it apart, it should start to separate on its own in a sort of natural way. A Bantu knot out is one of my favorite styles to wear, especially now that my hair is cut into a mohawk. It gives me just the right amount of shrinkage, it gives me a really nice curl, and also it helps last throughout the week. Sometimes when I do twist outs or braid outs, they start out so stretched that it doesn't really give me room to move throughout the week. But Bantu knots, because they're so tightly wound, they start out so shrunken, which looks good, and then it will expand throughout the week, which also looks good, so you kind of keep yourself fresh but similar throughout the whole week without too much added effort. So those are some of my tips and tricks on how I get and maintain some of my best Bantu knot out results throughout the week. Let me know in the comment section if you use these tips as well, or if you know of any other tips that kind of help your Bantu knot set great and be maintained throughout the week. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.